Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deebo and the Donks. Today, we're going to be talking about hockey. This should be a fun one, probably a real short one. Um, as I'm talking right now, we are in the Stanley Cup Finals. Um, Currently, the match, LOL, is 3-2 in favor of Florida. How did we get here? Pretty simple synopsis coming at you. We'll start over there in the East. Florida has taken a very brutal path here to the finals. First round, kind of an easy 4-1 win there, 4-1, and then they moved on. And where it real got tough was they had to take on Boston, who they had taken out last year after being down 3-1 and coming back and beating them, and then getting to the Cup and then losing to Vegas last year. This year, Florida ended up winning their division, I think, on the last day of the season, and then getting a little bit easier path to the finals. Obviously, knowing they're going to have to play Boston at some point because they have the divisional play in the second round always. So it was almost guaranteed they were going to play Boston if Boston beat Toronto, and they did. Not handily. That was a rough series. They ended up winning, I think, 4-2. But this series was brutal, with Florida just, edging out Boston. Boston had a couple of injuries, and their goaltenders eventually just did not hold up. And let's face it, the last 3 years or so, Florida's probably the best team in hockey. Losing to them is absolutely no shame in that. And then their next round, to get to the Cup, they ended up having to play the Rangers, which I thought was going to go 6-7 games and really be a grind, and it was, don't get me wrong, but they closed them out 4-2, and it really wasn't as even as I thought it would be. I know the Rangers are very talented and very deep and have very good goaltending in Chesterkin, but I don't know, I guess Bobrovsky was just, those 2 rounds against Boston and against the Rangers, he was just incredible. Probably the best goalie in all of hockey at the time. And moving into the Cup, we'll get into that here in a minute. We'll switch over to how Edmonton got to the finals, and they had a little bit more typical path. They played the Kings, I believe, for the 3rd consecutive season, and this time they dismantled the Kings. They ended up beating them 4-1. The Kings were a very good hockey team, in my opinion, very balanced. Have a little bit of a goaltending problem, which they just did something huge today, or yesterday. They traded for the former Wild goaltender and Stanley Cup champion Darcy Kuemper. He won a cup with the Colorado Avalanche 2 years ago. Kuemper is now a King, and they gave up some talent with him. So that should be interesting to see how how the Kings do next year, faring with the new goaltender. Kuemper was with the Capitals last year. He was okay. He made the playoffs. They ended up getting whooped in the first round, like I referenced to. So moving back to them, they handled the Kings very easily, 4-1. Then their second round matchup was a little bit more formidable against Vancouver. They were down 3-2 and had to rally and win the last 2 games, and they kind of did. I wouldn't say easily. They were tight games, but Edmonton just kind of flexed their muscle and their speed and got that series done 4-3. Really great series if you watched it. And I did watch, I think, 5 of the games. They were fantastic. Connor McDavid was terrific. Draisaitl was great. Bouchard was great. I mean, they were just fantastic in that series. Draisaitl kind of took over. I'll be honest, he was the best player in that series, in my opinion. But Vancouver is here to stay. They are deep and they are talented. They are going to be a threat for quite a few years, I'm guessing. Then the final series, they ended up having to play, I'm drawing a blank, they played the other conference. Okay, so we're talking Dallas, duh. And again, they had to come back. Dallas was ahead 2-1, and they ended up winning that series. But they went on a run and ended up winning it, I believe, 4-2. Dallas, extremely talented team the last 3 years. I would put them right there with Florida with talent and depth and goaltending. They are deep. Ottinger is their goaltender. He's been one of the best in hockey the last 3 years, but Edmonton found a way again. Draisaitl, probably the best player in that series. Don't get me wrong, McDavid has done everything right in this playoffs, but Draisaitl and Bouchard have kind of led the way. They have been terrific, and I believe that has continued into the Stanley Cup Finals between Edmonton and, of course, as you well know, Florida Panthers. It's been a great series in a way that it's been lopsided. Florida won the first 3 games. The irony there is they won the first game by being outshot something like 27-13. I mean, Edmonton was the better team that game, and they ended up winning 2-0. It was a grind, and they got it done behind their goaltending with Bobrovsky, and they took advantage of a situation, and you can do that in hockey. Your goalie can be hot. You can get a kick and a bounce here, you know. We all know the sayings. But the fun is they were up 1-0 in the next 2 games. They controlled the puck. They controlled the offensive zone. They were terrific on defense, and they dominated to build a 3-0 lead. And in hockey, I don't know how many times a team has come back from 3-0. I want to say twice, maybe 3 times, but one of those times, or maybe 2 of them, are way back when there was 6 or 12 teams. So it is so rare in hockey to come back from 3-0, and no one's ever done it in the Cup. So this would be incredible if they were to come back, and they have won 2 straight. They blew Florida out in Game 4 in Edmonton. They absolutely blew them out, 8-2 or 8-1. I lost interest in that game. It was just a massacre. Edmonton was flying up and down the ice, and they seem to have solved the Bobrovsky riddle, even chasing him out in the second period, which didn't think I would see that in this Cup final. Absolutely fantastic performance by McDavid and Draisaitl and all that. And then we moved on to Game 5, which moved back to Florida, and this is kind of, the thought process, I think, by a lot of fans was, maybe Florida took the night off that Game 4 in Edmonton because they wanted to win the Cup in front of their own fans, and maybe they did. We will never know. However, so far, if they did, it is severely backfiring because they kind of got dominated again. Edmonton built a 3-0 lead, and then held on, and it was 3-1, then it was 4-1, and then kind of had to hold on to a 4-3 lead. They did hit a couple pipes in the third period, and just missed an easy goal, tap-in goal in the third period, which, kind of would have put it out of control in a 5-3, 6-3 manner. But they didn't get the bounces, and I thought, we're going to probably see an overtime game here. But no, Skinner, the Edmonton goalie, stood strong, and they ended up holding on 4-3 for their dear life, and they advanced to Game 6. And Game 6 is in Edmonton, and I will imagine that will be a rocking house. It will be insanely loud. There may be a beer or 2 drank by their fans, considering it is Canada. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We all know that. Hey, listen, no one can outdrink a Wisconsin regular bar guy. No one, except the Canadian. That's my opinion. Some would say the Irish can, but that's my theory. I've drank with a lot of guys from Wisconsin, and boy, can they drink. And I've drank with just a few people from Canada, but they are impressive. Me and my buddy Jason, we went down to Florida with the wives years ago, and we ran into some Canadians were staying in the same hotel. So we were with them 3 consecutive nights, in the pool, hanging out, because that's what you do. It's all inclusive. And every time they were up 3-4 hours past us and up 2-3 hours before us drinking the whole time. It was utterly, I was in awe. And me and my buddy were in our prime drinking then. We were young, probably about 30 years old. Oh boy, those Canadians can drink. But back to the hockey. This is going to be fun to watch. I am a monstrous McDavid fan. And I would say if I have a third team, as a lot of you know over the past few podcasts, or maybe you don't know or don't care, I get it. I'm a huge Penguins fan. I'm also a very big Wild fan. And then I would say if I have a third team, it would be the Oilers. I've always enjoyed them all the way back to Gretzky. I hated Edmonton back then because, they were so successful and they beat the crap out of the North Stars. And it was just, as a young kid, it was hard to watch that. And I didn't enjoy Gretzky as much as I should have until he moved on to the Kings and later on to the Rangers. But they had so much talent, that Edmonton team in the 80s, and ended up winning, 4 or 5 cups. I mean, it was just insane. They were an absolute dynasty, and I did not enjoy that because they hurt my heart a lot. But I'm enjoying McDavid, even though they do kind of have their way with most teams, including the Wild. McDavid is setting all kinds of playoff records. He just broke Wayne Gretzky's all-time assist record for one postseason. Not only has he beaten it, I believe he's 3 assists ahead of it already. So he has the most assists in the history of any NHL playoff ever, going all the way back to the early 1900s. And that is impressive. And not only has he beaten it, he is 3 assists ahead of it and has potentially at least one more game, possibly 2 more games to add to that. Funny little side note about that. Bouchard is only, I want to say, 4 or 5 points behind Gretzky's previous record. So technically, this could be beaten twice in one playoffs, but that would be unfathomable. That'd be unbelievable. So cool. Bouchard has had a monstrous playoffs. He's the big defenseman. The leader of that team, in my opinion, is still Draisaitl. Draisaitl has 10 or 11 goals. He has been fantastic. He's the leader on the ice. He's in the corners. He is mixing it up. He is battling. He is showing that team. He is their vocal leader, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. McDavid's the captain, and we all know that. But I watch a lot of Edmonton hockey the last 4 to 5 years, and Draisaitl, he is willing this team. And the most impressive part of this Cup finals to me is what you probably have noticed as fans that have been watching, is that Draisaitl, McDavid, Bouchard, all of their stars, they have all been, Nurse even, they have all basically been real vocal in the post-game meetings with no panic. I'm not hearing any panic, and I've listened to all of their post-game and pre-game. It's been really, their post-skate on off days, they've been real positive. Even when they got down 1-0 and 2-0 and 3-0 and it looked like it was over, they were like one game at a time, saying all the coach speak that you hear. Coach was saying the same thing. Skinner, the goalie, was saying the same thing. And they've backed up that talk. They really have. They have dominated the last 2 games. And I do look for them to dominate back in Edmonton. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win. But I look for them to control the ice time. I look for them to have a real good opportunity to force a Game 7, which would be just glory for hockey fans. Come on, man. Nothing better in sports than a Game 7, especially for the Cup. And that would be down in Florida, which would be really exciting for their fans. As you may or may not know, Florida has never won a Stanley Cup. Now, they've only been around since 94 or 5 or whatever it is. They've been around a long time, but they have never won a cup. They've been to 2 finals, I believe, and lost them both. If they lose this one, it will be legendary, considering, as I spoke earlier, we're up 3-0, and no team has ever blown that lead in the Stanley Cup Finals that I am aware of. I'm 99% sure on that. This would be unbelievable. It's going to be super interesting. I don't really know. I wonder what's going through the Florida minds right now, knowing they have to go to Edmonton, make that extremely long flight. And then, play that. This is going to be, that is the longest flight, I believe, in the history of a hockey series, the Florida and Edmonton flight. And I find that interesting because that jet lag is going to be a real thing, and it has been in this series. Now, they do have the extra day off because it's the Stanley Cup Finals, which I think helps a lot. They've already been there for a couple of days, so maybe that doesn't affect them as much. I'm thinking on the run during that. I'm curious to hear what that's going to be like, the talk about that after the series, having that extra day. Usually what they do in traditional Stanley Cup Finals is they play 2 games, get a day off for travel, play 2 games, get a day off, play a game, get a day off, play a game. That's kind of the theory, never getting more than 1 game off. And the last couple of years, they do now allow an extra day for travel. it extends the series an extra few days, and I think that's probably the right thing to do because some of these, if you've got the Rangers and the Kings playing, that's some really long traveling, as you know. So with that said, I don't know how big a factor that's going to be, but clearly going back to Edmonton after being up 3-0 is probably going to be a little bit on the psyche of the Florida Panthers. I'm sure their leaders, Kachuk and the boys, Barkov, they will probably lead this team and their coach to, clear that obstacle and not discuss, or I should say discuss that and get that monkey off the back and realize, hey, doesn't matter where we win it as long as we win it. That should be the state of mind, we would assume, right? I do think that McDavid's probably going to get another 2 to 3 points there and extend that. And if he does, I believe he has 4 points, Wayne Gretzky's all-time most points. Now, he has the assist record, but he does not have the points record. And if he gets 4 more points, he does tie Gretzky's all-time record, and 5, I believe, breaks it. That is possible if they go 7 games. As you know, I believe McDavid has 8 points in the last 2 games, which is the most ever in a Stanley Cup back-to-back, ever. That is another incredible record. That, of course, was held by Gretzky. Gretzky holds almost every record there is in hockey, except for fighting, maybe, right? I do believe that he has picked up a couple goals in Game 5. McDavid, he's only up to 8, I believe, goals in the entire Cup final. So that's a little low for him. I was telling my buddy the other day, I'm like, if he gets hot and he starts being a little more selfish because maybe they're a little worried about him, he has something like, I believe he have 36 assists or whatever it is, but he has 24 primary assists. His 24 primary assists also leads the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. He has more than any Florida player does just in primary assists. For those of you who don't follow hockey closely, there's a primary assist and a secondary assist. The secondary assist is the first pass. So say the defenseman passes it to a player, then that player passes it to the person who scored. That's a primary assist. It's kind of like a goal. A lot of times it's in a 2-on-1 situation, or you've given up an easy goal for yourself potentially and set up your teammate for an even easier goal. Not always, but a lot of the time. And that's what he has done. Is he does have 26 primary assists, I believe, and 8 goals, which if you put that together, that is absolute domination. And that's what McDavid does. That's what he's done for the last 5 years, is completely dominate this league at times. And I think he's only getting better. I think he's only getting smarter. He is a true hockey guy through and through. He's been playing since he was 2 years old. I mean, he's Wayne Gretzky Jr. at this point, let's be honest. He is doing things in the playoffs that only Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky have ever done, and that is absolutely the highest praise you could possibly get as a hockey player. When you look through the playoff records as far as single-season playoffs, Gretzky and Lemieux, it's just like they're scoring in the regular season. They have it's Gretzky, Lemieux, Gretzky, Lemieux, Gretzky, and it's the same thing in the regular season scoring. They have it's just those two, and you throw in a little Yager and a little Bossy. It's just insane how many records those two have, especially in the playoffs, and I find that to be insanely cool. Being a huge Penguins fan and being an Oilers fan, I sure hope McDavid gets his name on the cup here the next time we talk. That would be super cool because I am a big fan. However, I do know how good Florida is, and I do know they can change that. They can flip that switch. And if Bobrovsky gets a bounce here and there, he can shut you out no matter how good you are, because I believe he's one of the hot goaltenders in this league. When he's hot, he is very difficult to beat. Even if you put a ton of shots and quality chances on him, he will find a way. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch these last games or game. Next game is Friday, this coming Friday. I hope to have this podcast out by then after editing it. It should be an absolute blast. I think I've said that 6 times. That's kind of redundant, but I think it just shows my excitement. I love hockey, and it's coming to an end for this season. So all we'll have here for a while, because the NBA playoffs are done, is baseball, which, don't get me wrong, I love baseball, as I know a lot of you do. And the Twins are on fire right now. They've won 6 of 7 again, and 19 of 27, and what is the other stat I saw? They've won now, there's something like 32 and 17, yeah, something like that, their last, whatever that is, 49 games. So they are showing the last month and a half that they are one of the best teams in baseball, and I do look for that to repeat. I do look for that to continue. I do think that Buxton is hitting a little better and playing really well in center field, which is so exciting to see. He is so valuable on defense. You guys know that. Lewis just got back, and he's batting like 500 with 4 home runs. In a week and a half, he's just absolutely dominating. And Kepler's been clutch, and finally, the first baseman has gotten hot, and they have started to get to a point now where their pitching's a little more balanced. The bullpen's been dominant for the most part. I do look for them to catch the Indians. I've been saying this. I think they'll catch them by the end of July, and then I think it's going to be neck and neck right down the stretch, depending on who has the least amount of injuries. That's my opinion on that. We could probably segue over here to a little wild. Pretty quiet. It's the off season, not a lot happening. They haven't done much that I can think of offhand. They have decided to re-sign Fleury, so he will go with Gustafson. They will go with that same combo next year. Not sure I'm sold on that. Gustafson was pretty, I would say, below average this year. He had some moments, don't get me wrong. He had a good 10, 12 game stretch there early in the season, but after that, I think Fleury was the better goaltender, so I'm sure we're all happy to see him as the potential, 1-2 guy. We don't know who one will be. They'll probably go with the hot hand or, matchups and things like that. We do know that we're locked up with everybody this year, so it's pretty much the same team coming back as last year, and that's probably not super optimistic considering they missed the playoffs. I don't know. I don't know what to think of the Wild. I do know this: you can miss the playoffs and still win the Stanley Cup the next year in hockey. So stay optimistic. Hopefully we can make a signing or two that'll look under the radar but end up being a really big deal. I look for that to happen, and I sure hope it does. That's going to do it for this podcast. I told you it'd be short. I just wanted to do a quick update and share my excitement for this Stanley Cup Finals. It would be something if this is the first time ever that a team in the Stanley Cup Finals comes back from 3-0. It just doesn't happen in any sport. It doesn't happen in baseball. It doesn't happen in basketball, and it certainly doesn't happen in hockey. It's unheard of. And to be in the finals of any of those sports is just incredible. I hope you are watching, and if you're not, you're missing out. Watch the hockey. It's got to be something you watch. If you're ever really bored, and I've shared this with all my hockey buddies, click on, it's a pretty funny YouTube clip. It's from Saturday Night Live a few years back. And I believe to search for it, just type in Saturday Night Live hockey broadcast. And it's going to be about this Black American who, is the I'll give you a quick synopsis so you can enjoy it. He is he's one of the sideline reporters for the NBA. And the bit is the person who does the hockey broadcasts is sick, so he's going to fill in, and he has to fill in as the sideline reporter, which means you're down on the ice. And he is hilarious. He talks about how cold it is, and he is having fun with the names of the players, which are European and Russian names, which you can't pronounce. They have so many consonants and so little vowels. It's really priceless. It's about a 5-minute bit. If you ever get a chance and you're a big hockey fan or not a big hockey fan, check that out. It is one of the absolute classic Saturday Night Live skits, and every time I watch it, I giggle my tail off. Anyway, I said the podcast was over, and now it is. You all have yourself a wonderful day.